welcome to the Tea and a Buddy podcast with me, Dominic.
And me, Erica.
Today's episode, it's all about your favourite subject. And our favourite subject. Weather. The weather. The weather specifically in...
Britain's favourite subject.
Oh, yes, that's what they always say. Oh, let's just talk about the weather. Let's make small talk about the weather. Specifically, we're going to be, looking at tornadoes and stuff, and because we live in Texas.
Yes.
The Texas Tornadoes, which are not a football team.
No, I think they are something, though.
They are something.
Yeah. It might be
No, the Oklahoma Tornadoes, isn't it?
No.
What is it, Oklahoma Cyclones?
Oh.
I'm sure we've passed through on one of our many road trips up to the Panhandle.
That's like the mascot of some football team.
College football, high school football.
Yeah.
There we go, yeah.
The Cyclones, yeah.
The Cyclones, yeah, because I've seen it, and you're just a little cyclone, with a face, little cyclone face.
Yeah, so I used to live in the Panhandle. I was a kid in the Panhandle. Texas Panhandle, that is. In case,
not the Florida Panhandle.
In case anyone listening is just like, the Panhandle, what is the Panhandle?
What is the Panhandle?
Texas,
go ahead and explain what exactly the Panhandle is to our non-Texas
In Texas,
people.
you just say the Panhandle, and you know the area of Texas that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I don't think about the fact that we have listeners around the world, and
this is being beamed out worldwide.
They might not know what I mean when I say the Panhandle. So the Panhandle, for anyone listening who doesn't know, is the little square part up at the very top of Texas.
It's the little chimney of Texas. Yeah. That's what it looks like. If you're looking at Texas on a map and you see it bordered, you know what the chimney is. Yeah. It's the chimney of Texas.
Yeah.
And it kind of is, really, because there's a lot of plants up there and everything, isn't there?
That
pump out
power
choo-choo.
plants and not plants like trees.
Yes,
and bushes.
power plants, not plants like trees and bushes.
There aren't a lot of trees up there.
There aren't a lot of plants up there, but there are a lot of chemical and nuclear. There's a nuclear plant up there, isn't there?
Yeah. But I'm not sure if the Texas Panhandle is technically part of Tornado Alley.
I think it is. I think that
it runs all the way through the middle of the United States.
Oh,
maybe,
I thought it came kind of it was going east to west. I thought that was Tornado Alley. Or does it go from north to south?
Oh, no, it goes north to south.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so that explains why we get tornado warnings down here. I thought, it's coming, the belt is kind of moving down. But
it's basically the northern part of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and then it does widen a little bit into Louisiana and Arkansas.
Yeah.
So sort of basically the same area that they call the Bible Belt is also Tornado Alley.
I thought the Bible Belt was again, east to west. We're looking at a map here, just on the back of our wall. You may have seen it on our Instagram posts. You just see that little goes from east to west. It goes from Alabama, Florida, and all that is and it just goes like that. That's what I thought it was. No, it's
the middle of the.
It's the middle of the United States. Yeah, it's Middle
so
America, as people like to say.
Yeah,
Middle America.
Those are all basically the same things. But so since I grew up there, I have had a lot of experience with tornadoes. I've never actually been through a tornado, though.
Yeah, you've never been in the middle of one.
No, I've never had one actually come through and wipe out anywhere I've been or anywhere any of my family has been. Yeah, I've been close, and we can get to a little story time about that after a while. But
after a brief interlude,
but they don't really have tornadoes in Britain at all, do they?
Actually. I did some research.
I have a little fact right here to read you.
I have a little factoid right here. Let me just read you something right here. In 2015, scientists at the University of Manchester mapped the UK's tornadoes and estimated that the area from Berkshire into London had the highest likelihood of a tornado, one every 17 years. Now, the UK gets an average of 30 to 50 tornadoes a year.
Oh, really?
They're so small, though, that they don't have much impact. But I think the biggest one was in Birmingham in 2005.
And maybe they don't even... Do they even, like, touch the ground, or they just, like, come out of the clouds?
Well, I mean, I think that's the criteria is they've got to touch the ground, so they do make landfall somewhere.
Right. I think they call them something else if they just
the
spin out of the clouds.
Cyclones, I think. And there's like dust devils as well, isn't there? That's what they call.
Well, a dust devil is basically the same
sort of thing. It's like a funnel.
The winds are not usually anywhere near what a tornado is, but it does create a little funnel. And
we've seen dust devils.
Yeah, and it just stirs.
I've definitely seen one. Yeah,
it just stirs up the dust and makes it spin.
That was kind of crazy because I was just like, we were driving back, and I don't know if it was like I can't remember what kind of field it was. It was like maybe a cotton field.
Yeah, probably.
And I just saw whoosh, whoosh, going up, and I was like, is that a tornado? And they were like, oh no, it's just a little dust devil.
Yeah. Like, it's not gonna...
Like a little dust devil, it's not gonna get you.
Yeah. It's just winds that are, like, kind of whipping the dust around, and they're not gonna, like, lift you off the ground, or they're not strong enough to
No, they didn't. They just flared up for like 2 seconds, and then and that was it.
So where does your information come, just in case anybody wants to go? Okay.
Yeah, I looked up the BBC, and the BBC. Where is Britain's tornado alley?
You asked the BBC, and the BBC told you.
Yeah, the BBC told me, where is Britain's tornado alley? Well, apparently it's in the area from Berkshire into London. If you want to look that up into a map.
Huh, that's interesting.
On a map, I should say.
So, do you know when the last time there was ever any damage caused by one?
Birmingham, 2005.
Oh, okay. There was damage at
the tornado lasted for around 10 minutes with wind speeds of up to 145 miles per hour.
Wow.
Uprooted around 1,000 trees.
Wow.
Injured 19 people and had a cost of around £40 million.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The strongest recorded tornado in the country struck Portsmouth on 14th of December 1810.
Wow.
And that had a T8, which is an F4 rating, because they're rated by the fajita system.
The fajita system.
That's what it is. Fujita, I think it is. The fajita system. Am I right?
Even in Texas,
I'm not wrong.
And they rated on a small fajita or a large fajita.
It is fajita. It's or Fujita, maybe it is. No, it is Fujita is the
Fujita.
Maybe. Fujita, yeah, but I like to say fajita.
God,
it's the fajita system.
Do you people honestly see?
If
what
you got
I
a
have
big,
to live with every day?
See a tornado come in, you're like, oh, that's a big fajita right there.
That's a number 5 on the fajita scale.
That's a number 5 on the fajita scale, man. Bloody mental.
Oh my god, that's so weird though, because I would never...
That was an F4 one though, because F5 is like the... Yeah. And you have, I looked on a map of like F5 touchdowns, and it's mostly around Texas and up, it's like... the east.
An F5 tornado is where my little story time comes in.
Come on, tell us all about your F5, your Fajita 5 tornado.
So, we used to live around Amarillo in the Texas Panhandle, and we would go shopping in Amarillo, like every weekend-ish, go to Amarillo's the nearest big city with stuff to do. So I say shopping, it would be like, oh, let's go to
the mall.
Let's go to the mall. Let's go get something to eat, because in my little town that I lived in, there weren't all that many restaurants even.
You want to get a fajita to eat.
To do. So anyway, it was just me and my mom and my brother and my little brother, and he was like, I don't know, 4 at the time, something like that.
Yeah.
And we were actually driving back home from Amarillo, and you could see, just growing up in the Texas Panhandle or anywhere in Tornado Alley or, anywhere in the United States that has tornadoes pretty much every season, which in Texas and in America, where if you live where there are tornadoes, there's, you have winter, you have summer, you have tornado season.
Yes.
Like, okay, it's tornado season now, but it's just a feeling in the air. Like, if you live around these places that have tornadoes, you know what the sky looks like when one's brewing, what
it feels like,
what the air feels like,
it's,
what the wind.
It's a close thing.
It's just, it's something that you can't
weird.
really describe. Yeah, you've experienced.
Yeah, we've been
now,
out there, and you're like, oh, it's perfect weather for a tornado because it's like really like thick. The air is like really thick, and it's still.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like really thick and there's no wind or anything like that, and it's just like, oh, this is weird, this is very bad.
The most recent one, actually, we just had a tornado warning recently, didn't we? on Easter.
Yes. I'm gonna tell them that story when you woke us up at 6 a.m. for a tornado.
The phone went off. They send you alerts on your phone, we get Amber Alerts if there's been a kidnapping in the area, so you can look out for the car that, someone...
And they come on the TV too, going, like they break into whatever thing, and it sounds really terrible, and it's like a dial-up modem going ding, 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 ding. The National Weather Service is alert for a tornado in your area.
Yeah, if it was your child who'd been kidnapped, you would appreciate that these warnings get your attention. Well, the same types of warnings we have for severe weather. And so we got one at I don't know, it was about 5:45, I think. And they were like, tornado warning. I think the phone was going off, buzzing like Dominic just demonstrated. And I turned on the television and they were like, there's there's been tornadoes spotted in
your area.
Everybody needs to seek cover. And
immediately it was like, tornado is on the ground, it's gonna get you. They were kind of like that. It was really like, and I was just like, I'm not hearing any or anything like.
Yeah, that's what Dominic said. There's no wind or anything, and I'm just like, yeah, that's the most dangerous thing is when you don't hear the wind blowing, because it's sort of like in a hurricane, the eye of the hurricane, where everything gets calm for a little bit before the rest of it reaches you, before the other side reaches you or whatever. That's sort of what happens right before a tornado. It's where the calm before the storm comes into play.
Yeah.
And it's just everything's still, the wind is not blowing at all. But even more eerie, you don't hear any birds chirping, you don't hear any sort of animal sounds either, because they all can sense that there's
a storm coming.
There's a storm a brewing.
Pretty much, yeah.
But so on Easter we went downstairs, and you basically just kind of hang out until you can sort of start to hear the weather pick up.
You go out there
and then maybe you get a bit more serious about, okay, we got to go into an interior room or whatever,
which is the under the stairs, cupboard under the stairs type thing, like Harry Potter.
Yeah. But basically, since we've lived in Austin, there's never really been a really strong tornado around here.
Not really. Well, no.
It's too hilly around Austin. Tornadoes need more
flat land,
land in order to continue
what there is up in the Panhandle,
and not getting broken up. Yeah. So anyway, back to my story time. I can't remember how old I was. I remember my little brother was about 4, so I guess that would have made me about 9. I'm not sure.
About 1991, 92 or something.
Somewhere. We're traveling back, and it's that same sort of weather. It's just still, it's hot, the air is thick, like you said.
Yeah.
And the sky is super, super, super dark. The trip between Amarillo and where we lived is about 45 minutes. So we could see, and in the Texas Panhandle, guys, the land is completely flat, for miles and miles
and miles and miles.
And so we could see across all the land, this gigantic tornado, in the distance, and you can't really tell where it's traveling when it's kind of that far from you. I don't know how many miles it was. It was a distance though.
You could just about see it.
Yeah, we could see it. So we get back into town, and my mom is like, "Who wants ice cream?" There's not a car on the road because the tornado sirens have obviously been going off and everything. Everybody's taking cover, and we stop at Dairy Queen and get ice cream before we go home. We could hear the sirens too, and it's just like, I don't know, you're just so used to tornadoes, especially at the end of spring and the beginning of summer.
Yeah.
You just don't think that much about it. In the Texas Panhandle, everyone has like a basement or a storm cellar or something, so it's just like we're gonna be okay. We're
gonna be okay.
We're
gonna get Dairy Queen.
But yeah, so we got Dairy Queen. We went home. Our neighbors had a basement in their garage, and we just went over there, and it turned out that particular tornado was like the biggest tornado that there had been in
that area
in years.
30 years.
I mean, like almost a whole town was wiped out. It was an F5 tornado, which an F5 tornado, I don't know if they're always what they call a wall cloud, but basically it's so big, it just looks like, it doesn't look like your traditional kind of Wizard of Oz cyclone type tornado. It just looks like a solid wall of
destruction.
Just basically black massive cloud. It's just absolutely huge. And yeah, I think people were killed. Most of a town was destroyed. It was like a really big thing, and here we are at freaking Dairy Queen, but we were okay, luckily, and
that would have been an F5 then.
It was an F5, yeah, it was. There was actually a bunch of tornadoes in the area that day, but there was the biggest one was an F5, which is the biggest on the fajita scale.
Fajita. Vegeta Pearson scale, I think it is.
But that's so... I would never, ever have thought that the conditions in Britain would ever get, like...
Well, we haven't got that much land mass for a tornado to strike down. Yeah. Really. But, I mean, Birmingham's kind of...
And it's quite hilly there.
But, as I said, the biggest one was in Birmingham in 2005. Recently anyway, and that's kind of slap bang in the middle of England. So,
and is it quite flat in Birmingham? I've never been.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess it can be. There's a lot of canals around there, so they can.
Yeah.
They've been able to dig canal trenches and stuff, into the cut.
Yeah.
But in November 1981. In the span of 5 hours and 26 minutes, during the late morning and early afternoon of the 23rd of November, 104 confirmed F2 rated tornadoes touched down across Wales and central, northern and eastern England.
Jeez.
F2, yeah, and they must have been little ones just striking down in fields or whatever and then going back, and but 104 of them in one... go. That didn't cause any damage.
Yeah. I mean,
F2's very light,
Yeah, I mean, they can still, like, rip roofs off and stuff.
Yeah.
Although,
roof ripping, man.
Although, I really wonder, because so many of the houses and buildings are so old and so well made in Britain, I wonder how much damage an F2 tornado would actually do to them. Because over here, like, F2 is pretty small, but it can still flatten, like, barns and things like that and rip roofs off of houses. But I don't know in Britain, because things are generally better made over there because they're older. And
they're older, yeah, and they were used in the stone or whatever, the brick.
They use more sturdy materials than they do when they're building things now.
To combat against the
weather.
The weather, yeah. It's like over here, it's very hot in Texas anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so everyone's like, they make it kind of like cool and everything like that, like cooler materials, for like.
Yeah, I guess
I guess you could say it's part brick. That's what most of the houses are made out of, and they part brick.
Part
brick and what's
half brick and half siding is what we call
siding, and it's like, what is siding? Is it wood? Is it particle board? What's going on here? But yeah, I mean, in Britain, the
weather is so like kind of the same all year round in Britain. The temperature,
the climate is very temperate.
Because what needs to happen for a tornado is, and why it happens like
It's a change of climate.
Yeah, it's when you're going from spring into summer is typically tornado season.
And it's quite severe.
And it's like, because at the end of spring, or through spring, you are still having, especially up farther north into the Texas Panhandle. Down here, they don't really, in Central and South Texas, they don't really understand how different the weather is in North Texas and the Texas Panhandle. But in the Texas Panhandle, in May, you can still have fairly cold days.
Yeah.
Mixed in with warmer days. But that is where the problem is you're getting these cold air streams from the northern United States, or coming off the northern west coast, and mixing with the airs coming up off the Gulf.
Yeah.
And it's just just swirling together and fighting each other, and that's what causes the tornadoes. But in Britain, it's basically like 40s, 50s, 60s all the time.
Yeah, it's a temperate climate, it's very temperate. I mean, it feels colder because of the wind. There's a lot of wind up there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that the Gulf Stream is actually what keeps it kind of warmish,
Yeah.
But it feels colder, you're further north than Texas,
because people always assume that it's going to be so cold in Britain, don't they? And they portray it like in movies with if there's anything set in Britain at Christmas, it's always snowing. It looks so snowy and cute and everything, when really it doesn't actually get that super cold and snowy and everything in Britain. It's
not really, no, it doesn't. I mean, people think, it gets snowy all the time in winter, and I think it was like it does, around like late December, early January, you might have a snowfall. But it really doesn't last that long. I think the last time, it was last year, was it? The Beast from the East?
Oh,
that blew through in March.
Yeah.
And it lasted for about a month. And it's talking about that. That's mainly the kind of things, that's mainly the kind of weather related stuff that Britain gets.
I was just going to say, what is the bad weather that Britain gets? Because my mom and I always talk about, you can live in these tropical islands like down in the Caribbean and everything, it would be so nice, and the water's beautiful and the weather's warm and it's always sunny and everything, but then you have to live through hurricanes.
Yeah, I mean, hurricanes, funnily enough, hurricanes happen, great storms happen, winds batter. The Great Storm of 1987 was classic because the BBC, I think Michael Fish, is going to go down in history as not having reported. It's like, it's not going to it's like, someone phoned in today and said it was there a storm on the way, but don't worry, there isn't. And then that was like the worst storm they'd had for years,
Yeah.
It was like 18 people died and over 15 million trees were lost when hurricane force winds blasted through southeast England. And it was a completely new weather phenomenon called the sting jet.
Okay.
This powerful 100-mile-per-hour wind can literally smash anything in its path. It was the first sting jet to be documented in Britain.
I love how you did Hulk smash fists.
Hulk smash! Hulk smash! That's what it did. It just Hulk smashed the southeast of England, and that was it,
Yeah. So
that's what it feels like.
So hurricanes, you guys can get hurricanes?
Can get, because we can, but I think this kind of conditions have to be very right for that kind of thing, like they were in 1987, I guess.
So it's just occasional hurricanes, occasional blizzards?
Gale force, blizzards, yeah. I mean, I think the coldest winter in living memory, shall we say, was 1963. I wasn't alive for it, though, so I'm not that old. A record low of minus 21 Celsius was recorded, which is...
I have no idea how much that is in Fahrenheit.
I think that's slightly below 0 Fahrenheit.
Oh, yeah.
I think. I'm not too sure, yeah. It might be.
Yeah.
And by the time this blizzard had finally blown itself out, 200 main roads were impassable and 95,000 miles of road was snowbound. Yeah, it was completely covered in snow. No one could do anything. It was so cold, and this was before, people were still burning coal at that point, So I can imagine it was I mean, those are like the two biggest things that, like, people still talk about, like, oh, the 1963 big freeze and stuff, I mean, we get flash floods, we get flooding.
Oh, flooding.
Flooding is a big thing.
That's you guys' natural disaster.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get many forest fires or anything like, or wildfires like they do.
Flooding happens pretty frequently, doesn't it?
Flooding happens very frequently. I think.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, oh, Britain doesn't have any like dangerous animals. Britain doesn't have any dangerous natural weather disasters,
but flooding is a problem.
Yeah. That can be
because we have a lot of water channeling through the thing, so rivers bursting their banks, completely soaking towns and drenching.
Pretty recently too.
Yeah, well, it happens pretty much every year. Every year to some poor town.
I seem to think that I can remember seeing people like up on their roofs and stuff because their houses were just filled with water not that long ago.
The Cockermouth flooding.
Is that a river?
It's a village or a town in Cumbria, I think.
You guys, would you be just to interrupt you? Sorry. Would you guys be interested in us talking about some crazy place names
Cockermouth
in Britain? Yeah.
Cockermouth
in a podcast. I think that might be kind of an interesting podcast.
Get yourself to Cockermouth.
There's so many crazy place names in Britain.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that actually. Yeah. But yeah.
Anyway, the Cockermouth.
The Cockermouth flooding. I remember when I went to London to get, I think it was for my visa interview to come over here. I switched on the news in the morning because it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. I had to be down the American embassy, the US embassy, for my interview. And I was like, my hotel room, and I was like, oh, during the night, the Cockermouth flooded. And that's up in Carlisle, or up in Cumbria. Carlisle's a city in Cumbria.
Yeah.
And it was terrible, and it was just like that's what I remember. But I do remember people saying, oh, so and so, the places in Wales flooded, and they can get pretty high. They can get to like almost to the rooftop. Rooftops. And people have to be like airlifted out and whatever.
I mean, there's so many like hills, and then things are just built like. I know some places I can picture in my mind houses that have like sloped down kind of entryways and stuff, and they must just completely fill up every time it floods.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if you live on the ground floor in one of those places, then or a basement, you're screwed.
Yeah.
People who live, if like London, center of London flooded, and you lived in a basement flat.
Has the Thames? I know the Thames bursts its banks. I think fairly regularly. But has it ever like really, really flooded?
I'm not sure. I think it has. I think years ago though,
I mean, it's such
a couple of centuries ago or something. I think, and because they built up the Thames barrier, and I think that's to kind of like stop the excess coming up the Thames and completely deluging the Houses of Parliament and everything in West London, Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel a little bit better now that I know that Britain does have natural disasters.
You feel a little bit better
I'm just
now.
Thinking, why doesn't everyone live in Britain? It's just this little magical place with no dangerous animals and no natural disasters, and
it's a magical island. We're on our way there with toys in a million, all under one roof.
Oh my god!
It's called Toys R Us.
Really quickly though, before we wrap it up, just to get back on tornadoes for a second, I don't think I've ever asked you this, so how about I just ask you on
asking me live, asking the tough questions live.
On record, for the record. No, and be honest now. Don't be Mr. Macho with this answer.
Mr. Macho. Macho.
Coming from somewhere where they don't really have tornadoes that much, and then moving here where, I mean, even though, like I said, in Austin, we don't really, and I've never known there to be a really destructive tornado actually touch down anywhere around here. were you nervous at all the first tornado season that we
I guess I might have been a bit like, oh no.
Because
I don't really want to have to like pack up all my stuff and go into the thing and hope that we have a house after it, you know?
Right.
I mean, it was more kind of like, oh, this is annoying.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really like annoying. And that would be nervous, like, oh, you're going to lose everything,
Yeah.
Or you might die. It's like they're not to be trifled with, tornadoes,
Yeah.
But it was just kind of like, yeah, I guess I was,
Because
I was very nervous,
Yeah, I think I would be. I mean, I know personally, I was a bit nervous moving down here.
You're gonna wake everyone up at 6 a.m. for a tornado.
Even though there's more dangerous tornadoes that do touch down more frequently in the Panhandle.
Yeah.
At least, like every other house has a basement.
We don't have a basement here.
I do not know and have never known anyone in Austin with a basement.
Austin is built on limestone, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of limestone.
A lot of limestone around. So, the cost to dig through that to get a basement is monumental. It's why you don't have like an underground system too.
There's a lot of natural caverns under Austin also.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's another reason. It's just like, when they have dug for things, it's like, oh, we found another cave,
Found another cave. Just stop. Just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that was the weather.
That was the weather. What's the weather like where you live?
Yeah, where do you live? And tell us all about the weather.
Yeah, let us know though if you live somewhere where they have tornadoes or hurricanes, or to me earthquakes are like the ultimate.
Well, that's California covered right there.
Yeah.
That's the West Coast covered right there, and they don't have too many tornadoes on the West Coast.
No.
But they do have a lot of earthquakes, so there you go. It's like oranges and apples,
Yeah. I mean,
apples and oranges.
You've got to deal with horrendous blizzards on the East Coast and earthquakes on the West Coast and tornadoes in the middle. Well, and hurricanes on the East Coast too. Actually.
Yeah, Hurricane Sandy was the last one.
But earthquakes for me are like, because where you have no warning like you do with tornadoes and hurricanes. You have nowhere to, a hurricane, you know ahead of time, so you can just leave,
Yeah.
But with earthquakes, it's like there's nowhere to go. You have no warning, and there's nowhere to go, even if you had a warning. Where do you go to escape that?
Yeah, that's true. Where do you go?
Yeah, so to me, earthquakes are the worst. Let us know where you live and what kind of natural disaster, natural weather-related phenomenon you have to worry about where you live. This is such a pleasant podcast.
Yeah. It is. It's very pleasant.
Anyway, I'm interested in all that.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for listening. As always, we really appreciate your support. Without you guys tuning into these, we wouldn't be able to make them. So,
yeah, it's very good. It's very good that you tune in. Thank you very much.
The easiest way to continue to support us is just by sharing our podcast, helping us spread the word with your friends and family, and also leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
That's.
Thanks a lot, everybody, if you do that. So.
And we would like to give a big shout out to Ariel, who has left us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, yes, Ariel.
A very wonderful review that
Thank you so much.
So
Ariel.
super much. And if you would like
she's from Texas too, I think.
Maybe she'll let us know if she's ever been through a tornado.
Yeah.
If you would like to get a shout out, leave us a rating, a review. You can rate us and review us
and comment. We love seeing comments.
Whatever you like on Apple Podcasts, and we will give you a shout out. Well, we might not give you a shout out if you say this show's a load of rubbish.
Well, no, we've had a lot of that. So.
But anyway, thank you for listening as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.